Hi everyone, for those of you that are new here, my name is Manny and I am a recent graduate from the University of Oxford where I studied computer science and philosophy. And although I really enjoyed my time at Oxford, today I wanted to give you a really transparent insight into the pros and cons of going to Oxford. While on paper Oxford can seem like the perfect place to go to university, I think there are so many considerations that you really need to think about before deciding to go to university there. And so I thought today I'd put them all together in a video for you that has been highly requested so that you can weigh up the pros and cons for yourself. Before we begin today's video, I have a message from today's sponsor. The Census 2021 is here. Sunday, March 21st is Census 2021 Day. And for those of you that don't know what the census is, it's a chance for the Office for National Statistics to once every 10 years count all the individuals and households within England and Wales. And it's such an important thing to get involved in, as it can really impact students for not only making sure that the businesses in student areas can cater to the needs of the student community now and in the future, but can have an impact on environmental policy based on statistics about population growth. It really is a chance for you to get your voice heard and has very little effort on your part, as it takes only about 10 minutes per person to fill out the form. It really doesn't matter where you are. All you need is a unique code that has already been sent to you in the post, and if not, click the link in the description to get a unique code texted to your phone. It takes literally 10 minutes to fill out and can really be a way for you to be a part of real change. Another thing is to make sure you fill out the census using your university address. This will allow maximum impact for the student community. It really doesn't matter that the census day has passed, you can still fill out the census using the link in the description box below. So click on it now and get involved today. I cannot stress enough how important it is for the student community to get involved in the census and make sure that resources are allocated and decisions are made keeping the student community in mind. In fact, pause the video now, take 10 minutes, go fill out the census and pop right back, and we can then cover the pros and cons of going to Oxford University. You're back, hopefully you filled out the census, so let's get back into the video. So the first pro that I have of going to Oxford is the tutorial system. Now you've probably heard this 100 times in every prospectus on each page of the Oxford website, but the tutorial system is really something that sets Oxford and Cambridge apart from other universities, because it really is a chance for you to get very individualised teaching. So what happens is each week when you do your 1 or 2 essays a week or your problem sheets, rather than that going to a lecturer who doesn't know anything about you and just come back with a mark, you'll have a usually 60 to 90 minute tutorial with 2 students and a tutor who's usually an expert in that subject area, who will go through your work, give you their take, tell you some comments on that work, and really go through it in a very tailored way as opposed to just getting feedback through an online portal. For example, over the 4 years of my degree, I actually developed a really good relationship with my tutors. They were not only there for me academically, but also pastorally, and it was just a really nice relation because they are oftentimes the people that interviewed you and gave you the offer to come to that college. So it's really nice to kind of see them, it's really nice for them to kind of see you grow through your time at Oxford. So not only human resources, but Oxford in general has a fantastic wealth of resources. There are over 100 libraries, each college has its own library, and over the 4 years that I was there, I never ever had to buy a single textbook because there were enough copies for as many students as there were at that college. And if there are ever books that I needed that might not be like common sort of general books on that topic, or might have been very niche specific ones for an essay that I was writing, the library were more than happy to order those in. So there's an abundance of resources at Oxford, and really something that helps also with the cost of student life, because you don't have to shell out lots of money for lots of textbooks. Another point that kind of piggybacks off that is the fact that Oxford offers fantastic financial support. I don't know what the exact statistic is, but I think around 2/3 of Oxford students receive some form of financial support, whether that's a bursary, whether that's a maintenance grant, whether that's accommodation support, things like that. Because the Oxford terms are so short and you cannot get a job while being a student at Oxford, there really are fantastic provisions that the university and each of the individual colleges have put in place to make sure that any economic barriers do not come in the way of you flourishing as a student. It's really important to note though that this might actually be seen as a con, because this can vary from college to college. Each college has its own endowment and its own pot of money based on the alumni or whatever sources that they have. And it's really important that if that's something that is important for you, that you go on each college's website and you have a look at the financial support that they offer, because this can heavily vary from sort of richer colleges to poorer colleges. But on the whole, Oxford, the university, the entity which kind of sits above all of the colleges, does offer a sort of basic standard of support across the colleges, no matter which college you go to. So for example, at my college, not only were students offered fantastic sort of maintenance support to sort of keep up with the cost of student life, but they would even subsidise things such as the college balls. If you were on any bursary, they would actually charge you half the price of the ball ticket. So you can still get involved in all of the college events without having to pay the sort of hefty price tag that may come with them sometimes. Moving on to the first major con, the workload can be absolutely crazy. So if you're studying a humanities subject, it's very common that you might be doing 2 essays a week. So that's 2 1,800 to 2,500 word essays each week, each of which have pretty long reading lists sometimes. In my case, I was studying computer science and philosophy, so I had 1 essay a week and maybe 2 or 3 problem sheets a week, depending on how many courses I was taking that time. Now that can be quite a lot. Just to get through the reading list for 1 essay would sometimes take me at least 2 days, because there might be 6, 7, 8 texts. And it means you really have to be efficient about your time, and you really have to plan your time in order to really get through the work efficiently, and then have time to do other things such as sport, extracurricular activities, debating, etc. There are so many different opportunities while at Oxford that it's important to plan your time to make sure you can get the most of them. The good thing about this is that because you have so much work all the time, there is ample opportunity for continual feedback. Every tutorial you're getting personalized feedback on your work. And the good thing is that none of these essays actually count. So your weekly essays, until you sit your final exams, don't count for absolutely any part of your degree unless it's coursework in some cases for some subjects. But most of the work you do over the 3 or 4 years that you're at Oxford doesn't actually count. The first piece of work that actually counts are the final exams that you sit at the end of your final year. While that can be great because you get continual feedback, the downside is that there is so much pressure on the final set of exams that you sit in your final year, and they can often be very, very close to each other. During my finals, I had 6 exams in 1 week, 3 the next week, and then 1 the following week. So it was very, very crazy in terms of the fact that 4 years came down to a really sort of intense week at the end of it. Another downside to having this crazy workload is that it can often feel quite repetitive and monotonous. Because you're doing an essay each week or a problem sheet each week, the weeks can get very monotonous and can feel a bit like a broken record. You often don't have time to recover from writing 1 essay to starting the reading for the next one. And that can sometimes not be great, and burnout can definitely settle in sometimes. But the good thing of the fact that it is personalized teaching means that if you do ever feel like that, if you feel like, you know what, you're burning out a bit and you can't do another essay, you need a little bit of an extension on things, you can just email your tutors, and more often than not, they are there to help, they are there to understand. Some of my tutors would be like, okay, if you have 8 essays to do in the 8 weeks of this term, you can pick any 2 essays to get out of, where you can just hand me an essay plan and we can just discuss the topic in the tutorial as opposed to actually produce an essay. And that was great for the weeks where things would just kind of spiral out of control and just be a bit much. But again, the terms are very short. Before the term has even started, it's over. And it's great because you do have that downtime in the VAC where you can go home and you can just have a little bit of a breather. But it means the terms are really intense. The next pro that I have is the collegiate system. So if you're an undergraduate at Oxford, you are part of a specific college. And this can really dictate what your experience is like, because colleges vary so much. Some are modern, some are old, some are huge, some are very small. So the good thing is that while you all may be at Oxford University, if you want a modern experience, you could go to a college like St Cat's or St Anne's, for example, that has much more modern architecture. But if you really want an old historic college, you could go to a college like University College or Merton or Christ Church or Magdalen, where the architecture is a lot older and might give you that sort of Oxford experience and feel that you wanted. The good thing is that no matter which college you apply to and which college you end up at, everyone ends up loving the college that they're at. I applied to Hertford and I was slightly distraught when I ended up at UNIV, but a week into it I was like, Hertford what? Hertford who? I love UNIV. Why did I not apply here? The other advantages of being part of a college, it's a great sort of community. It's very much like an extended family. Everyone looks out for their college. Everyone is very much like a sort of Harry Potter dorm. Like, you live and breathe by your college, whether that's a sport, whether that's the competitions, whether that's the bops, which is like the fancy dress parties that you have. Your college very much is your extended family. The downside is that colleges can be quite insular, which means that you might not, unless you're part of university-wide societies or sports or clubs, you might not actually interact with people in other colleges. So it's really important that if you want to do that, you kind of get out into the clubs and societies and make an effort to meet people in other colleges. So not only can colleges kind of be insular and bubble-like, but Oxford as a whole can be quite a bubble, because the sheer intensity of the workload and the fact that everything in Oxford happens in its own time zone, be that the sort of week numbering system or the workload, or the weird traditions, means that you can very easily kind of lose touch with the outside world. I very much kind of lost track of current affairs, news that was happening, what my parents were up to, what my friends at other universities in London were up to. Before I got to Oxford, I thought I'd actually visit them a lot more, that I would go to London every other weekend, see them, but that just kind of never happened. The Oxford bubble is really a thing, which can sometimes be a bit annoying, but the reality is that when you have those downtimes after the very short terms, you can then kind of catch up with the world and sort of recover from what can be a sometimes very, very busy term. Another advantage of going to Oxford is the town itself. Oxford is a beautiful city, not just architecturally, but historically, and just being there in the summer, especially when the sun is shining and the buildings look fantastic, is honestly a privilege. After a couple of months, you begin to take it for granted, but when I sort of go back and visit, I'm like, wow, I cannot believe I studied here. It's such a fantastic city. It's so small and compact and sort of self-contained that if you had to get from one place to another, it wouldn't take you more than 20 minutes to get there. Most people have bikes, which can make sort of getting from college to lectures and sort of zipping around very easy, but you definitely don't need one. I very rarely even took the bus. You would walk to clubs, walk back from clubs, like everything was sort of walkable distance, and that's what I really liked about the city as a whole. The other thing I liked about it is that it was a student town. Everything was kind of built for the students, whether that's the restaurants, the clubs. There was always student deals and student packages, and when the students would come back at the beginning of term, all the restaurants and cafes would put out signs saying, welcome back students, discount on this, discount on that. So you kind of really like the fact that people are welcoming of the students. It definitely feels like your own campus. However, the downside of being in a town like Oxford, where the buildings can be so gargantuan, sort of the city and the architecture is kind of larger than life, can mean that it can sometimes be quite imposing. I definitely felt in my first year quite a large level of imposter syndrome. I definitely felt like, oh, I wasn't supposed to be here. Everyone around me was smarter than me. And the buildings and the city and just the general atmosphere at Oxford definitely doesn't help that. I think the big thing for me that was so helpful in that sort of imposter syndrome process was when I spoke to my tutor about it at the end of my first year, and he kind of pulled me aside and said, look, I've been at this university, I was an undergrad here, I did my master's here, I did my PhD here, and now I'm a tutor. He'd sort of been here for the majority of his life, and for him, he said that he still felt imposter syndrome, and that was inevitable of being at an institution that was over 1,000 years old. And that it's just something you kind of have to deal with and something you kind of just have to get used to. And for me, the fact that my tutor, who I kind of saw as this computer science god, was saying this to me, felt like, who the hell was I to feel this? Like, if he felt it, me feeling it is totally natural. And sort of coming to terms with that imposter syndrome is something that takes a while, but is definitely something that can be difficult to sort of navigate. So another pro that can sometimes be perceived as a con are the traditions. Now, I absolutely loved being involved in traditions, whether that was May Day or matriculation or BOPs or formal hall. To an outsider, these can feel like they're just annoying things that are expensive and that only posh people do, but the reality is that a lot of them were very affordable. Formal halls at my college were like £7 or £8 for a formal 3-course meal that you would never be able to get on the high street. It was just a good way to kind of get involved in Oxford culture, and I really liked that part of it, whether I was going punting in the summer or playing croquet on the lawn. It sounds like the most pretentious stuff ever, but it was just sort of kind of fun to live this sort of English country life. Equally, if you don't want to get involved, no one's ever going to hold it against you. No one's going to be like, why did you not come to that formal hall, huh? Why did you not come to the May Day parade, huh? No one really cares. If you want to get involved, get involved. If you don't, no one's going to hold it against you. The next point I want to cover is definitely a con, and that is the lack of diversity. I think Oxford obviously gets in the headlines for lack of diversity not just within race, but also socioeconomic background. There's this perception that Oxford is full of very rich, sort of pompous people, and everyone is from the same private schools and everyone is from the same background. But the reality is that Oxford is improving. They are trying. It's very difficult to say they're trying their best, but there are efforts that are definitely in place to make sure that Oxford is trying to get the best talent, no matter what your background is. And that is definitely aided by the financial support packages that they offer, by the fact that they have sort of flagging and contextual flags in their admissions process to make sure that any barriers that you've had to face, they are aware of in that process. Yes, it's not perfect. Yes, Oxford still has a large percentage of privately educated students, has a large percentage of people from certain economic backgrounds, but that definitely should not be a consideration that dissuades you from applying. There are such amazing societies and organizations like SeekSoc that I was a part of, like ISOC, like HumSoc, like the Afro-Caribbean Society. There are so many different networks that you are a part of when you're here that you can find people that are like you can find people that you can relate to make that experience better, and to be there if you ever have any cause for concern. I know that every single person's experience will vary so much depending on their background and how they get along with certain people and things like that, but I would kind of say hand on heart, I never really had any major issues while being at Oxford because of my race or background, and I know that can vary from so much from person to person, but hopefully it's reassuring that you don't have to come from these similar backgrounds, you don't have to look like everyone else to fit in and have a positive experience. I just want to reiterate that I don't want to sugarcoat this. Oxford is not as diverse as some of the other universities out there in London or across the rest of the United Kingdom. The reality is, for every pompous, entitled person that I've come across while I've been at Oxford, which yes, I have definitely come across them, there are 10 other amazing, fantastic people that are from an array of different backgrounds that I'm so glad to have met and call my friends. I don't think that we should let that one person dissuade all of us from applying and deny what can actually be a fantastic experience to some of you amazing, talented people out there. If you're worried about not feeling like you're the Oxford type or you're not from the right background, don't let that dissuade you from applying. There is so much more to Oxford life than that. Another thing which I think is really important to look out for is the fact that Oxford courses can be quite rigid. Now, it's important that to not just blindly apply to Oxford because it's Oxford. The course structures are very specific. While some courses may have a lot of flexibility within them, there are some courses that are very rigid and have very few options. So if there's a certain part of a subject that you're really interested and Oxford doesn't actually cover that in their course, it would be much better off to apply somewhere else. For example, if you are looking to apply for computer science and you are a very practical minded person and don't really like the sort of maths behind computing but want to be the best programmer ever, Oxford may not be the best place because they take a very theoretical approach to computer science. So it's very important. It's almost like studying an applied maths degree. So it's very important to look at the course structure and see what about the subject do you enjoy and does this course actually focus on that? And lastly, for me, that probably one of the biggest pros of going to Oxford is the fact that it literally sets you up for almost anything in life after that. The intensity, the workload, the network, the fact that it looks fantastic on a CV, like there's just no denying it. The confidence that you get from tutorials and speaking to people who you know are experts in that subject and you know more than you, but having a conversation with them and having that sort of flow of dialogue and being able to explain your point of view are skills that will set you up for virtually any industry whatsoever. You might go from law to working at an NGO or from geography to working in an investment bank. The core skills that you get from studying at Oxford, from managing to somehow get through 3 or 4 very rigorous years, really do set you up for the future. Not only that, they support you through your job application process when you're looking for that through the career service, and also once you do go to Oxford, you can come back to the careers service for the rest of your life and seek support, whether that's CV help or interview help or looking for new jobs. They are there to help you for the rest of your life. They don't just bid goodbye to you once you've graduated. So on the whole, while there's a lot to think about before deciding to go to Oxford, for me personally, the pros definitely outweigh the cons. I've really enjoyed my time there, in spite of the sort of hiccups along the way. There were definitely lows, from the workload to the imposter syndrome to sometimes feeling like Oxford lacked a level of diversity. But that was easily outweighed by the amazing friends that I've made, the confidence that I've gained from the tutorial system, the job opportunities that I've got after it, and also being part of the Oxford traditions, which for me I absolutely loved. Hopefully this video gave you an insight into both the pros and cons of going to Oxford and help you make a more informed decision about attending the university. If you like this video, do give it a thumbs up. It really helps. Just take a second, click that thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new here and want to see more content from me. Once again, before we end, don't forget to fill out the census. The link is in the description box below. It's so important to let national statistics know that you exist so they can cater for you, so the government can cater for you. So policies and resources are allocated that take into account the needs and wants of the student community. It's super important and literally only takes 10 minutes. So if you didn't already, click that link in the description box below. Fill out the census today. And don't forget using your university address. I'll see you guys later and hope you have a fantastic day wherever you are. Bye.